Okay, so today we will be seeing two commands, specifically sweep and loft. Let's look at sweep first. So sweep essentially lets you make any curved design. And for example, if you want to make a spiral, how would you go about it? So you can make a sketch, and today we can see 3D sketches as well, by the way. So you can make a sketch and you can have a profile, and that profile can actually follow the sketch, making something like a tube. Okay, for example, if you want to make a pipe, which is bending at different angles. So you don't essentially want to make a lot of cylinders and a lot of fillets. What you would want to do is make a path for that pipe, essentially, maybe make a profile of that pipe or tubing, and then have it just sweep along it. So let's go ahead and do some of these exercises for sweep and see how it works. So let's do some simple ones first. Let's stick to 2D rather than 3D. So let's start by making a simple Allen key. So we'll just make two lines. Let's make it 100 mm long and maybe 50 mm widthwise. Let's give a nice fillet, maybe even 20. Okay, and we'll finish the sketch now. What we will do now is make the cross-section profile of this. Okay, so what we want is a profile. So we'll select a plane that is perpendicular to the previous sketch, and we'll click or create a new sketch there. Let's make a hexagonal profile because it is an Allen key. We can make a polygon with a hexagon of, let's say, 3 mm edge length. Okay, it might be a very thin Allen key, but that's fine for the thing that we are trying to practice here. Let's turn the origin off, and now we'll go to create. We'll click on sweep. What we want to do now is select a profile, which is the face of our Allen key. And the next thing is we want to select the path. And as soon as we've selected the path, we can see that our Allen key is done. We've already made it in like 2 minutes. So let's make another one, but this time let's try and make a hollow tubing. For this, I'll make another sketch. So let's go to our original sketch maybe so that we don't have too many. Let's make a random spline, not thinking too much about how it looks. Okay, let's turn the sketch on because it's off, I think. What we would want to do now is make another profile, but let's make a circular profile, but with a concentric circle, right? So we can offset it using O, which we have seen. Let's do it minus 1.5 or 1.6, whatever. 1.5. Let's click OK. Let's turn this sketch on as well. Let's go to sweep. We'll select this profile and this path. So even though it gives a warning that the profile does not actually intersect with the path, because I think my path was some millimeters away, it tries to solve it itself. Fusion is really strong at doing that now. And you can see that we've got a hollow tube. Okay, so let's now try and make some 3D sketches and then make some sweeps in 3D. So to make a 3D sketch, you select a plane, doesn't really matter which one because this time your sketch is going to be in 3D. But using 3D sketches can actually complicate your drawings a lot and create a lot of errors. But it's an option and you can explore. That's why I'm trying to show it to you. So we have to enable this toggle button over here in the sketch palette, which says 3D sketch. So if it is off, what we are constrained to is drawing in the plane. So even though it looks like it's in another plane and I revolve it, we can see that the spline never escapes the plane. Okay, so for 3D sketches, I want you to be really careful because it can get really complicated very easily because we can only see in 2D while making 3D sketches and we perceive something and it's drawing actually something else. So it's important to draw some constraints or some construction lines before making the actual sketch. So make sure you've enabled 3D sketch. Let's just try and make a wave, but in 3D. So let's make a 100 mm line in Z-axis. Let's try and constrain ourselves to the axis so that we are not lost. Let's make another one, which is 100. Let's keep continuing it. Okay, so we've made a small construction in 3D, which is actually a 3D sketch. Let's try to make a spline along this. So first let's convert all of these to a construction. Yeah, let's try and make a spline now. We'll just click on the points that the vertices of the edges, and then we'll say, okay, now we've got a 3D spline and you can see that it looks very different from different angles and it's not very intuitive how it's going to end up. So it's important to make some construction points and constraints. Now let's make a profile that we want to, let's say, sweep. So let's make a circle, maybe 20 mm. We can become a little bit fancier here because we know so many different commands now. Let's try and make a square and make a circular pattern using this new rectangular square that we have prepared. And let's make 10 of these. Press OK. We can also delete this line. Don't really need it. And either we can trim all of these so that it's just one big region, or otherwise we'll have to select all of those tiny squares separately while selecting the profile of the sweep command. Okay, so now we have got a nice profile that we want to sweep along our 3D spline. So let's go ahead and try doing it. We go to sweep. We click on the profile that we want to sweep. We click on the path. And we can see that Fusion has created a very complicated looking 3D spline with a very nice profile. And it has managed to do all the curves with the intricacies of the profile that we had added. So we've tried a lot of sweep commands. So let's just go ahead and save this file. I'll call it sweep practice. And let's open a new file to practice Loft. So Loft essentially allows us to join different surfaces together, which have different primitive shapes. For example, if I make a circle on one of the sketch and then I offset the plane for, let's say, up to a certain distance, create a new sketch there. But this time I make a square or a rectangle. So let's make a center rectangle again. And I want to join them in 3D. What is the best way to do it? I mean, it's really difficult because the profile is changing. If it was a circle on both the sides, we could have made a path and just extruded it, or if it was a curved sketch, we can actually use the sweep command as well. But what if the profile keeps changing? For that, we have a command called Loft, and this is really easy as well. You just need to select the two profiles for the simpler cases, and Fusion can actually just join them. So you can see that creates a nice curvature and some complicated surfaces that convert a square profile to a circular profile. You can extend it further, you can have more shapes, for example, an octagon or a hexagon, and see how Fusion tries to deal with them. Sometimes Fusion also gives errors when surfaces are so complicated and they intersect each other. So you can use the loft command for those purposes. Another thing, as in for any other command as well, is you just don't use the 3D commands for making new things. You can actually use it for the Boolean operations as well. For example, if on this sketch I make an offset of this circle, let's say -8, yeah, and similarly on the bottom side, I make a new sketch and I create an offset again, maybe -15, right? Doesn't really matter again. So now also I have two profiles which I can use in Loft, but this time I can actually use it for making a Boolean subtraction or a cut for that matter. So I can select the two profiles that I created, and you can see that Fusion has itself detected that cut is the most predictive feature that we would be wanting to make, but you can obviously change it as well. Okay, now let's see some more commands with Loft especially. So let's make another offset surface. Let's offset it by 95 mm. Let's make a sketch. Let's make another circle, maybe a little bit bigger. Right. Now what we want to do is that if I just lock these two surfaces, Fusion will first of all give us an error because the bottom surface has a hole and this one doesn't. So it's not really able to form the loft. Let's try and fix that first, okay? So let's just make a sketch there. So as soon as we make a sketch on a surface, we have both the hollow part and the external outer diameter as well. We can just extrude it for, let's say, 10 mm and have a flat, nice disk for Fusion to make a loft between them. What I wanted to show you is that if I use the loft between them, it's just a simple loft that we saw earlier. But what if I want it to follow a certain uh, guide or a certain shape in 3 dimension while lofting it? So not just a straight edge, but maybe a curved edge. So that is also possible. And for that, we will need a plane to first create that edge that we want the loft to follow. So I have selected the plane that will be at that will pass through the axis. Then I will need I will have to make a curved surface that I want, not a surface, sorry, a curved line or a spline that I want the loft to follow. And for that, I need to make sure that it actually touches both the profiles. So for that, the best way to do and to ensure that it actually touches both of them is to use project and project the straight lines, which is basically the projection for both the circles on our sketch. Then we'll go ahead, make a spline. You can make whatever shape you want. And you can click OK, and you can finish the sketch. Now let's come back to Loft and do the same thing again. So we'll select the two profiles. And another thing that you can select is a guide, which is basically the sketch or the line or the curve that you want the loft surface to follow. So if you click on plus and you select the spline that we've created, you can see that Fusion fits the whole loft command to our sketch. So this is sometimes useful if you want to create a joinery between two separate faces, but you also wanted to follow a specific curve. Okay, so I hope you were able to follow along. These were some simple commands, but it gives you more power in terms of thinking what you can do while creating your engineering drawings or while creating assemblies.